One October evening in 2016, an Arkansas farmer sat in his pickup truck near his fields. Another car pulled up, the farmer got out, and seconds later, he was shot dead. The motive for the murder was entirely tied to a dispute over a proprietary weed killer. For 10,000 years, farming has relied on a simple loop. You harvest a crop, you save the seeds, and you plant them again next season. Today, doing that with certain modern crops is a legally punishable offense. A massive agricultural corporation engineered a system where they strictly dictate what farmers can do. They deployed private detectives to inspect rural properties, demanded private business records, and set up a hotline so neighbors could report each other for unauthorized planting. By controlling the intellectual property of the crops themselves, this massive chemical company hijacked the most basic mechanism of modern farming. They turned independent growers into subjects of a ruthless corporate surveillance state. To trace the origins of this control, we have to look back to the 1940s. Chemists had just discovered selective herbicides like 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T. You could spray a whole field or a perfectly manicured suburban lawn, and the chemical would selectively kill broad-leaved weeds while leaving the grass perfectly intact. Production skyrocketed to meet consumer demand. But in 1949, one of the main manufacturing plants exploded, raining a black, foul-smelling powder onto the workers. Within hours, they developed severe, painful skin lesions. The company gave them an ultimatum: keep working with the chemicals or lose your job. The culprit was a highly toxic trace byproduct called dioxin. It formed any time the manufacturing temperature crept just a few degrees too high. The manufacturers knew exactly how dangerous the contamination was, yet they kept it quiet as they supplied the U.S. government with millions of gallons of the herbicide to spray over the jungles of Vietnam. Long before they monopolized the modern seed market, this company established a clear pattern of behavior. They consistently buried the deadly biological consequences of their products to protect their revenue streams. In the 1970s, they needed a new hit product. They found it in glyphosate. If you look at this flowchart of a plant's biology, you'll see a series of reactions called the shikimate pathway. This pathway produces the specific amino acids a plant needs to survive. Glyphosate acts as a perfect molecular imposter. It binds tightly to a specific enzyme in that pathway called EPSPS, blocking the actual chemical from attaching. The entire process breaks down, no amino acids are made, and the plant starves. The chemical killed almost everything green. That meant farmers could only safely spray it before planting or after harvest. The company realized that if they could make a crop immune to glyphosate, farmers could spray their fields all year. They searched the toxic sludge outside their own manufacturing plants and found a mutated strain of bacteria that had evolved to survive the chemical. Scientists isolated that immune DNA sequence, coated microscopic gold particles with it, and used a literal gene gun to blast those particles directly into plant tissues at 1,400 kilometers per hour. A portion of the DNA successfully fused with the plant's chromosomes, creating a crop that could withstand direct hits from the weed killer. Because the company engineered this genetic code in a lab, they could patent the plant itself. To buy these resistant seeds, farmers had to sign a strict technology use agreement. The contract explicitly banned them from saving any seeds for the next year, locking them into buying fresh supply and the corresponding weed killer annually. Even if a farmer refused to sign the contract, the weed killer would frequently drift over from neighboring farms on the wind, wiping out any non-patented crops in its path. To survive the cross-pollination and chemical drift, neighbors were essentially forced to adopt the proprietary seeds. The company engineered a biological dependency. The chemical and the seed worked as a locked system, rendering traditional farming methods physically impossible and legally actionable. By the early 2000s, this closed-loop system dominated agriculture. After reviewing decades of data, the independent Global Science Panel classified the world's most popular weed killer as a probable human carcinogen, strongly linking it to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The resulting lawsuits forced the company to hand over its internal communications. The released documents proved that executives had spent decades ghostwriting safety studies, colluding with regulators to kill opposing research, and deploying PR armies to discredit any scientist who raised an alarm about the chemical's toxicity. They sold the entire corporation to a German chemical giant, cashed out, and left the new buyers to face tens of thousands of cancer lawsuits, resulting in over $10 billion in settlements. The strict legal bans on replanting seeds functioned as a trap. The contracts forced global agriculture into a mandatory dependency on a hazardous chemical, trading the health of farming communities for the exclusive corporate ownership of nature itself.